Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and we're talking Chiefs today with columnist Sam McDowell and beat writer Jesse Newell. We start by talking about the future of the Chiefs' home. Clark Hunt spoke at training camp this week, and we follow up on some of his responses, breaking down the decisions confronting the team, like do they play at Arrowhead, a renovated Arrowhead, or in a new stadium, in Missouri or in Kansas. After that, we get into the wide receiver position and how one player, rookie Xavier Worthy, is changing the outlook of the offense. It's great stuff from Sam and Jesse, so let's get started. The last time this group was together, I think we bid farewell to the 2023 season, which was maybe a month ago? But here we are, the first Chiefs podcast of the 2024 season. I'm declaring it right now. And we just finished listening to Chiefs post-practice interviews. Today it included Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton. But the one I want to start with is Chiefs CEO and Chairman Clark Hunt. I think we determined that Clark didn't say or didn't say much that we didn't already know about the stadium and the future of where the Chiefs are going to play and train, which they have to come to some decision here soon. But what did we learn anything, Sam, from Clark today about future of Chiefs home?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, since we just talked to Mark Donovan on Friday, and Mark Donovan has definitely been the point person in all this. I mean, it's why you hire team presidents to handle stuff like this. And Clark hasn't been absent, but, I mean, they want to illustrate this message that both Kansas and Missouri are still in play for obvious reasons. It creates leverage with the other side. But, pre-April, they were only focused on Jackson County and renovating Arrowhead Stadium. And it was pretty clear from Clark Hunt today that he's at least strongly considered or had the thought process of what would a new stadium in Kansas look like. And actually Kansas or Missouri. He said, just because if it's in Missouri doesn't necessarily mean it'd be a renovated Arrowhead, that at least like building new in Missouri is one option on the table. I don't think any of us would call that the leader in the clubhouse, but I just thought his tone and demeanor seemed like somebody who was receptive to the idea of not playing at Arrowhead.
One of the campaign messages going into the Jackson County vote was iconic Arrowhead. And, my father, Chiefs founder Lamar Hunt's his favorite place in the world. And I get it. I get why you would say those things, hopefully to persuade voters. But it lost resoundingly. And I haven't heard iconic Arrowhead since then. I think the message has changed when it comes to, as you just expressed, I think the message has changed when it comes to this. So,
yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I think a lot of us who followed this vote think that being attached to the Royals did not help their cause. But that shouldn't prevent the Chiefs, from your point on messaging, to do their own reflection of what they could have done differently. Because if it is in Missouri, I mean, Mark Donovan told us on Friday, it would have to go. He can't envision a route where it doesn't get put up to another vote. So they would have to do a similar sort of campaign and convince people. And to your point, I think their messaging would be different. And even if they do a renovated Arrowhead Stadium, for example, I don't think they would unroll those same renovations that they did last time, because those were not successful. Those did not go over well with the public. So, I agree with you. I mean, I think that the messaging would change on just the way they talk about Arrowhead, even if that is the option.
I think we've all been through this. We get comfortable with something, we like it, and then there's another opportunity, like if you move somewhere. I mean, I recently experienced this, and you don't know what you don't know. And so I think this all can be true. I think Clark means it when he says that Arrowhead has a lot of sentimental value. And if he had his way back then, that renovating that would have been perfectly fine with him, and that it would retain that value that it had, like you talked about, Blair, when Lamar said that was his favorite place on earth. If you could renovate that and can continue to keep that space, he likes it. But sometimes you move and you don't know what you don't know, and hey, there's a grocery store right next to you, and you got these neighbors that you didn't know about before. And so to your point, Sam, now that this Kansas thing becomes a real option, all of a sudden there's other things on the table for the Chiefs potentially, money-wise and facility-wise, that potentially weren't there before. So I think all these things can be true at the same time. But to your point, your main overall point, Blair, last year, reading the tea leaves, it seemed like Clark Hunt did not want to leave Arrowhead. He wanted to renovate it, and because of those sentimental reasons we talked about, that tone has changed now. But I think there's justifiable reason for that, because the more options you're presented with, now you realize maybe some of these things that you didn't know before.
And I didn't catch something until today, the way he said it, but Blair, since you've caught it before, I wanted you to talk about just the fact that they're paying attention to what some of these other teams across the league are doing.
I've heard Clark Hunt and Mark Donovan say in previous media opportunities that they have been greatly influenced by what they've seen with the new stadiums within the division, within the AFC West. SoFi Stadium and Allegiant Stadium, SoFi in LA and Allegiant in Las Vegas. Maybe it's just being, we've all looked at new houses, right? We think, man, what a cool new house. And it'd be cool if we had some of these features. And they've had the opportunity to take tours of these new stadiums. And we've all been there to both of them. And both of them have hosted Super Bowls.
Yeah, two of the nicest ones that we get to go to, for sure.
And so the Chiefs see those stadiums every year. And I think they have conversations about, why don't we have nice things like this?
Yeah.
We're the 3-time Super Bowl champ since these stadiums have been built, and we're playing in 60-year-old Arrowhead Stadium.
That was the insinuation from the Super Bowl for sure. You heard quotes like that because if you're a Chiefs player, you've gone to your second straight Super Bowl, you get to go to Vegas, you're in this practice facility, and it's pristine, and you're like, the Raiders get to have this? The Raiders? Like, what's going on? Like, they haven't won a drop in 20 years. What's going on here? So there is at least that insinuation. You heard Andy Reid talk about it at press conferences openly. You heard players talk about it because there's so much media that goes on at the Super Bowl. But, aside from the owner and personnel side of this, the front office side of this, that there's definitely a player side of this too, that you kind of get used to what you're used to, and okay, this locker room isn't great, but you deal with it. Then you go to Las Vegas and you see what the Raiders get for winning nothing, and I'm sure that at least in their heads they're going, how many Super Bowls do you got to win to get a facility that's nice like this? How many?
Well, I guess what I think we can take off the table is the idea of, I go back to the description of Arrowhead Stadium as iconic. And when I think of iconic and Mark Donovan using that term often to describe Arrowhead, I think of the iconic stadiums. I think of Lambeau Field and Wrigley Field and Fenway Park and in Allen Fieldhouse, places that you can't imagine not existing, that have existed for a long, long time. Almost a century in a couple of cases, right? More than a century. Arrowhead isn't that. I mean, there's certainly an emotional attachment to that place. And my gosh, over the last 6 years, what that stadium has meant to Kansas City. But I just don't think of Arrowhead in those terms. Like it's so special, it becomes a historic landmark that you can't tear down.
Yeah, I mean, what's special about Arrowhead is the atmosphere that it produces. And to your point, like Wrigley is the stadium itself, right? And I know I'm not saying that Wrigley doesn't have a great atmosphere, Fenway doesn't have a great atmosphere, but it's the historicness of the buildings themselves. And I do think people in Kansas City would disagree with us on that, but having been to a lot of these others, I totally agree with you that so I think a major part of whatever the Chiefs do is going to have to be about preserving the atmosphere, whether it's renovating Arrowhead or whether it's building new. That needs to be top of the list priority for them.
That's a really interesting point, Blair, because I hadn't really thought about that. But we've been to, I hate to use this word, the bowels of these stadiums that are like that, the Lambos, the Allen Fieldhouses, where you're trying to upkeep a really old building, and it's a mess. It was such a mess that me and Sam got lost at Lambeau to the point where Giannis held the door for us as we were sprinting back to try to get to the media room because we didn't know where the heck we were because this maze
and Lambeau's been renovated.
Yeah, and in this map of pipes and tunnels and stairways, but you're trying to make something that's untenable work, basically. But I didn't really think about this till that's a great point, though, Blair, is that this is sort of the fork in the road there. Arrowhead Stadium already is one of the oldest stadiums in the NFL. This would, if you're going to keep updating it and spend the cost to do that, which is going to be, at some point pretty equal to building a new stadium, you are going to have to make it iconic. You're going to have to make it, hey, this is one of the original stadiums, and you just keep doing that sort of thing. But otherwise, again, a new stadium makes a lot more efficiency sense, and it makes a lot more money sense, because the potential that you can do with that and the other things you can host potentially are much more than what the Chiefs have right now.
The gap here is the finances, right? I mean, I think we all think that's what's going to end up driving this conversation, not just like Kansas versus Missouri finances, but old renovation versus like new build finances. And I asked Mark Donovan about that on Friday because, the supercharged version of these Kansas Star bonds they're putting forth allows them to pay the legislature to approve 70% of a new stadium cost. And it seems like a really high number for a project that we think is going to be $2.5 to $3 billion. And in reply, Mark Donovan said they don't anticipate that they'd get the full 70%. And at another point, he sort of estimated the cost. Okay, so maybe you get $1 billion or $1.5 billion, but that leaves you with $1 billion or $1.5 billion. And then, okay, how do you finance that piece of it? And so the ownership contribution for a new stadium would have to be significantly more, even if like the investment might be, to Jesse's point, a better investment for the long haul. I don't know how comfortable this ownership would be, if they're the ones that have to put in upwards of $1 billion. This is an ownership group that, was trying to get an $800 million renovation passed and putting in $300 million of it. And like those two percentages might end up looking equal, but the actual total number is much larger on the Chiefs and their ownership group if they, go across the state line and build new.
And to the point, there's a lot more money potentially to make, but you have to upfront the cost.
Yeah.
And that's where you don't know where the comfortability with that is.
One more thought before we change the topic. Jesse, you brought it up, and it's something I had not thought about. It's so obvious that the Chiefs training facility is a big part of this as well. Where they practice and where they train is substandard by today's NFL standards, and that's going to be part of a new, either a renovated or a new stadium. It sounds like to me, and I'm so focused on the stadium and what stayed and who's going to pay, and I didn't think about the practice facility, and that's a part of this now too.
Well, I'll kick this one to Sam because obviously,
it came up like late pre-April with Jackson County, and there were conversations with Frank White, as Frank White wanted to guarantee that their practice facility would stay in Jackson County. Now, I was told by multiple sources that came in so late that they thought they had reached potential parameters or discussions or in other aspects of the discussion, that it was a very late addition to that conversation, and that's part of the pushback on it. But it is going to be important to wherever they go, especially if they try and stay in Jackson County. Mark Donovan on Friday called it a potential economic driver, because we've seen in Dallas, in other places, that they are making that kind of their quote-unquote headquarters, and that's where they want fans to flood. And Mark Donovan has told us multiple times that all the feedback they get from developers says don't develop out at Truman Sports Complex. It's kind of a tough combo to then say, okay, but let's build a major renovation to this training facility out here. So I think, when we talk about percentage chances of them leaving their home, they're much more likely to leave that training facility behind. But it's also like, Clark Hunt continues to get dinged on these report cards. Like, it is a bad current image for that training facility. I was told last year they have to now have some of their full-time employees work at the stadium rather than the training, because they just don't have any office space over there anymore. Like Clark Hunt used the word outgrown today. They have literally outgrown that facility in terms of the number of employees that can be housed at that place. Like, they need something. The players on the last two report cards have screamed at them, you need to do something about this, but they're in a weird spot of putting in money to something that I think they eventually want to move out of.
Well, at least they have a nice training camp facility to go to.
Here we are.
In the dorm rooms of Missouri Western State University in St. Joe. You're right. That's where we're originating this podcast from today. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the team. I think the player of focus over the first 2 days of a full team scrimmage was not present today, but he was present on Sunday. And Jesse, I don't know how many times you have written about one play at a training camp, but that was the focus of your story on Sunday, which is in it'll be in Tuesday's edition of the print edition of the Kansas City Star. I recommend you go read it. But tell us what happened, Jesse, on that play.
Well, yeah, I mean, Xavier Worthy, the first-round draft pick for the Chiefs, is just such a fascinating topic because Sam has written this over and over. I referenced it right before the Super Bowl too, but Patrick Mahomes has completely reinvented himself to cater to the pieces that the Chiefs have at receiver. Basically, that they haven't had a deep threat who can catch or track the football in the last 2 years. So his average depth of target went from 5th in his rookie season, or his first season, 2018, after his rookie season when he played the one game. He was second to last year. So the Chiefs, the men talking about it, Andy Reid keeps needling Patrick in summer practices. Oh, you're going to take the check down? You don't want to throw it deep? They're trying to rewire his brain to get, instead of him playing with one arm behind his back, which basically what he did so successfully the last 2 seasons, open up the deep game again, which is going to open things up for so many other people. But anyway, Xavier Worthy, he sat out OTAs, he sat out mandatory minicamp with a hamstring issue. It's almost the exact same thing Sky Moore had 2 years ago. Sat out OTAs, sat out mandatory minicamp with a hamstring issue, and then we heard kind of whispers later when Sky Moore didn't develop as much, it would have been great to have him at those practices to get rapport with Patrick Mahomes. So you kind of come into this, I think if you're a Chiefs guy, a Chiefs coach, you're kind of holding your breath like, can Xavier Worthy pick right up? Can he overcome that right away? And this first full squad practice, Patrick Mahomes rolls to his left, throws 60 yards across his body across the field, and Xavier Worthy does a great job of efficiently looking up, tracking, and taking a perfect route to the ball, catching over Brian Cook for a 60-yard touchdown. And it basically breaks Twitter, the internet, the NFL's X account, everything. But this may be the most fascinating part. If you watch the bottom of the screen, I showed Sam this on Sunday, but Matt Nagy, the mostly buttoned-up offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, is just going ballistic after this play in these videos. I mean, he is doing dance moves I'm not sure he's done in the last 20 years.
He's doing at the parade.
Yeah. He might have had a little bit of help at the parade. Those guys usually have a little bit of liquid courage then. But again, Andy Reid's going to be mostly buttoned up. Hey, Xavier, it's one of practice of 12. Got to help him with the installs. But the true emotion of this is Matt Nagy just fist bumping, throwing his body around. They are so excited for the potential of what this offense can be and what Patrick Mahomes could become again if Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown can provide that type of element. So it's one practice. It's in shorts. He's still got to learn all these sorts of things. But if that's part of the Chiefs offense again, look out. And look out because you see how their offensive coordinator is reacting to seeing these plays in the playbook that might work, that have not been working the last 2 years, even when they won the Super Bowl.
It's only been 2 days of full squad scrimmage. They're not in pads, but I've noticed more deep balls thrown in 2 days than I have in recent memory of training camp. It just seems like that is an absolute emphasis. And I mentioned Xavier Worthy being the story on the first 2 days. On the second day, he wasn't here. So, Sam, I think you were the first to notice it. So we found out after practice he had an illness. So maybe he celebrated a little too much, last night. I don't know. But it was a big moment. It really was, and it nothing. I don't think anything in camp will better illustrate, as you said, Jesse, that what the Chiefs want to emphasize this year.
Yeah, I mean, so there's multiple people that I think have to play a part in improving this, which is, like Jesse mentioned, the quarterback has to, want to throw the ball deep more. The coaches are going to have to scheme it open. But, both of those tie into the fact that the wide receivers sucked in this area last year. And there's a reason the quarterback didn't want to throw it deep all the time last year. I mean, he was the worst rated on a per-pass basis quarterback on 20-plus yard passes in the league last year. And when you look at it, they had the highest drop rate on those passes last year as well. So that's why plays like this catch our attention. I mean, we all have been in training camp long enough to know not to make a big deal out of one or two plays, but like Jesse said, they made a big deal about this because they know this is something they didn't have last year. And I still think Hollywood Brown is going to be a bigger contributor to this aspect of their game than Xavier Worthy is, at least in year one. But like it's very obvious the type of wide receiver that they targeted. Like it's not just Patrick Mahomes, convincing himself to throw the ball more. It's like, okay, but who's going to be on the other end of this?
I mean, let's be honest about this too, Sam. Like, they trade up in the first round to get Xavier Worthy. You mentioned this. He is the first receiver in a long run of receivers. Like, he's going to get compared to Pearsall. He's going to get compared to McConkey. He's going to get compared to Keon Coleman for sure. This is a big deal. Like, this is like the Chiefs-Bills, where the Chiefs traded up, got McDuffie, and the Bills got Kyrie Elam. I mean, are you going to be right again? If you're right again, the NFL, again, they're not going to let the Bills hear the end of this. So just an early indication. Again, super early. He's battled hamstring issues, which, again, we know his size. There's going to be questions about that. But just an early moment, too. Like, you can see it in Matt Nagy's mind to think there's a lot of pressure on this kid to be something. He's got to be something because the Chiefs have so much at stake in him to show that moment. It's like, okay, if he's on the field, it's there. And the Chiefs might be right again. If they're right again, the rest of the NFL is about to find out. And if they find out, this offense might be a whole lot better than last year. Again, better than last year, even when they won a Super Bowl.
You might look at, if it's one play, just how this affects, like you mentioned, Blair, Xavier Worthy wasn't here today, but how it affects the rest of his training camp. I bet he thinks that was a pretty big play.
Yeah.
True. On Sunday, when Worthy was here, the day that he made that play, the ones were Worthy, Brown, and Rashee Rice. And that looked totally different than anything I saw last year. I mean, I just looked at that and said, now that's different. That can be pretty damn effective.
I agree. All Rashee Rice's underneath stuff, I think. What's his best attribute? He's terrific after the catch. Mm-hmm. And when you've got guys that actually are a threat deep, you might have some more space to run after a catch.
Let's stay on that position. I don't know how many times we have talked about it since the end of the previous year, but those three, you take those three and you add Justin Watson, I think you've got 4 locks. And then you've got another bunch, the next level of guys, Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman, Sky Moore. You may throw Justin Ross in there. Maybe.
He was on the team last year,
He was. Nico
Remigio, I think, will at least make some noise.
Yep. So it kind of they kept 7 last year, and it wasn't a strong position.
Right.
So how do you anticipate Andy Reid with position numbers? And what positions are we talking about here? If he keeps 7 or 6 wide receivers.
Yeah, I feel really strongly that would be a gigantic mistake to keep 7. I felt that last year coming out of camp, and then after we saw it in practice, I just feel even more strongly about it. I think 6 is too many, to be honest, but I think they will keep 6 because of what you just mentioned, Blair. Like, they like the depth, but to me, the fact that they signed McCole Hardman, a month ago should illustrate to them that you don't have to have, like, these guys are available. And they didn't have to trade much to get McCole Hardman last year, even when they were really injured at that position. And then, like I said, he's just available at the last minute before you go to training camp. I see no reason to keep that amount. I think if there's interest elsewhere in the league, you could potentially get an extra draft pick out of one of those guys.
Get a 7th rounder.
Yeah, whether it's a 6th, 7th rounder, I don't know if there'd be a ton of interest in Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore, but I think those are the guys that the 3 of us are probably most interested in. If, what do you do with Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, especially if Sky Moore doesn't show, if he doesn't have a good camp?
I'm kind of down on Sky. I just am.
I don't know anyone who's high on him right now.
I guess I don't see the big contribution there from him. He's had moments, right? Caught a Super Bowl touchdown 2 years ago. Yeah. Had the good punt return against the Bengals in the AFC title game that year. Had good moments. Not enough.
Yeah, but I think the one thing, Sky's best argument is he's going to say there's probably only one other guy on the roster that does what I do, which is work the underneath routes. Kadarius Toney has a worse argument for that because and McCole Hardman, they're looking around saying, okay, well, the other one in that equation does. They have Xavier Worthy. I do think Hollywood Brown's a little bit different than those guys, even though they're built similarly and have speed. But those guys, I think, McCole Hardman, it's a weird one to me. I understood why they wanted to add some depth, but I don't know what they didn't already have on their roster when they added McCole Hardman back.
I'll stay on the bandwagon. I mean, I think Sky Moore fits as a fifth receiver much better than he does as you're coming in as the first or second. Now, studies have shown us over time, receivers should hit the ground running, basically. And if you don't produce in your first or your second year, the odds of you having some crazy breakout season, it's very, very low. But I also think about this from a front office perspective, and that's why it's fascinating to me about Kadarius, because Kadarius still remains very cheap. Like, they don't really gain much if they cut him, financially. Yeah. And Sky Moore is the same way. He's still on his rookie contract. So if I'm thinking like assets for the Chiefs, and you guys are talking about trading. I mean, last year they traded Amir Smith-Marset for a seventh-round pick. You get something out of him, and he didn't have the pedigree, you would say, of these other guys. It's just about, you don't know what it is, and you're not sure exactly what it will produce, but like, it's cheap to keep, and there is some value there. And so I would put Sky fifth with a bullet right now. I mean, he was still out there with the ones today for a lot of the drills. Am I saying he's going to have 900 yards or something? No, but I think he slots in much better behind two other good guys, and all of a sudden, hey, he's a pinch hitter off the bench. And right now, if you're the Chiefs front office, I mean, what is Sky more worth to other teams? I don't. You're selling so low. I don't know. You basically try to eliminate the roster crunch, and right now you're eliminating the roster crunch to get who? Kadarius Toney on the roster? I mean, Nico Remigio? I mean, I don't know. But to me right now, that's sort of the dilemma the Chiefs face. It's not the ideal scenario, but to me, I think Sky Moore, right now you roll with him, you see what he is, and he's at least been in the system and is more reliable on the field and off the field than what you'd say with Kadarius Toney right now. So if you're getting a little bit of security with that, I think it's fine, and he's probably worth more to you than he is the rest of the league, at least at this point.
I think the other thing the Chiefs have to ask themselves with this is, like, what do they want the makeup of their room to be?
Yes.
I mean, Jesse got that quote from Justin Watson last year that sort of implied he didn't think the guys were working hard enough in practice. And that's not a Sky Moore quote. That's not a quote about Sky Moore. And I think you bring in Hollywood Brown, who has had excellent reports in that area. You bring in a rookie who you would not think is going to be lackadaisical in that area. We know Justin Watson works hard. I think, you've got Rashid, who's a second-year guy, wants to take a step forward. I think, to Jesse's point, when you say, okay, that's a pretty good makeup of the personality of your room as well. In a room that probably had some problems with personality last year, Sky Moore doesn't really disrupt that. And we know that Kadarius Toney can be a distraction. In fact, we're yet to see that he cannot be a distraction. And that probably gives Sky Moore a leg up if that becomes a decision.
I wouldn't have thought this last year, but I've seen more of Kadarius Toney with the 3s and 4s this year than I've ever seen of him. He's got to produce, I think. And to your point, Sam, if it's on the fence, everything is going against him right now because of the other stuff that you would have to deal with to put him on the roster. Now, we know he's amazingly talented. We know he can do things that nobody else in that receiver room can do. But you got to produce, and you got to be reliable. And at a certain point, you can't just continue to keep a guy on the roster because you believe things will change. Things have to change. And so that, to me, is the end of the roster sort of question mark is Kadarius Toney, Nico Remigio, McCole Hardman. Those are the three to me that are kind of fighting for a job, and we'll see how this training camp plays out.
Brett Veach needs another Brett Veach, a guy that just really likes to trade for guys he was high on pre-draft.
Good points, guys. Well, let's save topics like 4 tight ends, who the third running back will be. We'll save that for another show, but I did want to let's wrap it up by talking about left tackle and Wanya Morris getting some more first-team reps here early than Kingsley Suamataia. Thank you. I will never not need to be corrected on that name.
It's just like it's spelled, yeah.
Suamataia. I have to have it in front of me.
Just think of it, 3 short words that end with Suamataia.
Anything, what should we read into Wanya getting?
Well, I'm afraid to read into anything because during OTAs and mandatory minicamp, they threw Kingsley out there with the first team, which I was not expecting. I thought you're going to put the incumbent out there, you're going to make Kingsley earn it. Right. So him out there with the first team surprised me. I said, this to me is an indication that they probably like Kingsley. They want to throw him in. They want him to have the expectation to win the job. You're right. We've come back to training camp now, and it's been Wanya with the ones. And so it's kind of the opposite. It makes me want to not read the tea leaves. I think I'll still, at first blush, remain with my first thought, which is I think they want Kingsley to win this job. I think they want him to be the left tackle. Sam wrote a great column about this. It's risky, man. This is not what Super Bowl champion teams coming off Super Bowls do. But this has been such a musical chairs lately with them. Orlando Brown and Donovan Smith, and trying to figure out this position, that if Kingsley's right and he can be okay this year and can develop into that spot, we know Patrick Mahomes is so good at avoiding sacks. He kind of raises your floor with this no matter what. If they can get him locked in with the second round value and have that thing secured for a while, it really would help out not only the short term, but the long term as well.
Twice in Super Bowl history.
Yeah, twice in Super Bowl history, a team has started a left tackle at least half their games and won the Super Bowl. And only 2 other times a team has been runner-up in that situation. So, yeah, it is.
And how many
risky.
every game? It was 0, right?
Yeah, I mean, the most ever is 12.
That's that's crazy, you know?
But, I mean, Jesse's right. The headline of this is, like, the Chiefs want Kingsley Suamataia to win the job. So, like, if it's a tiebreaker, he's going to be the starting left tackle. I do remember, like, Trey Smith getting the first snap of training camp his rookie year alongside Creed Humphrey. And, like, those guys were the starters from day one of training camp. And so, yeah, I do think it's notable that Kingsley was not the first guy out of the huddle as they open training camp on Sunday. It tells me that it really is going to be a battle during this training camp.
A topic we will explore further as we continue to cover training camp for you. All right, great conversation as always. Thank you, guys. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks to producer Randy Mason for putting together the show, and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell and Sam McDowell for sharing their insights. Thanks for listening, and please let us know what you thought of the show, and let us know what we can do better or what you want to hear by leaving a rating and review. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.